While not a traditional fighting game, Super Smash Bros. Is a series that I'm sure we've all had fun with over the years, and I can't put into words how much I played Brawl as a kid. Many moons ago, I made a video about the original Smash Bros., and as approximately 5 decades have passed since then, I thought it would be appropriate to cover the next game in the series. That's right, we're going to be tackling the behemoth that is Super Smash Bros. Melee, and after I realized just how much there was to cover, I just about fainted. Even though I mostly played Brawl and Smash for Wii U when I was younger, Melee was a game I always really enjoyed but never tried to learn, so this video is essentially an excuse for me to go back and figure out how all of this works. I would really love to go out and actually buy a copy of Melee, but I'm not made of money, man. Look at how expensive this is, and for such a popular game too. Not to make anyone feel old, but Melee released nearly 25 years ago, so perhaps it could be considered a retro game? That might be pushing it a little bit if I'm being perfectly honest, but either way, there's a crap ton of stuff to cover here, so be sure to arm yourself with your favorite item as we fly into Super Smash Bros. Melee. After the first game in the series smashed its way onto store shelves in 1999 and became an instant hit, series creator Masahiro Sakurai felt it necessary to immediately begin work on a sequel. However, this plan would come back to bite him, as the game's 13-month development cycle led to Sakurai experiencing major burnout, and he even described his lifestyle as destructive, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. He planned for the second Smash Bros. To release for the then in development GameCube system, and even though development kits hadn't been created yet, that didn't stop Sakurai. He thought about how powerful the system could realistically be and then made plans in his head according to the console's assumed limitations. According to a video on Sakurai's YouTube channel called Super Smash Bros. Melee Game Concepts, Sakurai's development team over at HAL Laboratory realized that the GameCube development kits were much easier to use than the Nintendo 64 ones, ensuring a smoother development cycle. The increased power of the GameCube allowed the developers to include things that would have been impossible on the N64, with the prime example being the soundtrack's live instrumentation. Since Melee takes the form of a disc and not a cartridge, real-time audio streaming was now possible, allowing for richer sound. The first mention of a Smash Bros. Sequel was at E3 1999, when Sakurai claimed he was interested in making such a title for the GameCube. This led to him being swarmed by games journalists asking him for more details throughout 2000, but he would always reply by stating that no such game was being worked on. This was a cheeky lie, however, as Melee's design document was completed on July 5th, 1999, and after countless hours of hard work, the game was finally announced during E3 2001, with Sakurai explaining in a blog post, "I first told people that I was going to make a Smash game for the GameCube at E3 1999 in America. The date on the finished design plan was July 5th, 1999. Prior to that, I'd say I'm not making Smash Bros. While privately tinkering away at it. Because at the time there wasn't a GameCube development kit in any shape or form, I had to start with a design plan and work on it slowly but consistently on my own. And currently, as of May 2001, while there are a small number of people coming and going, my staff has grown to over 50 people, and if we count people that were involved on the project at any point in time, that number would increase to at least 100 people currently working on this project. And not a single person on this team wants to make this game boring or not fun. I'm extremely motivated. People's expectations are higher than ever, and I want to contribute to the future of this new hardware, the GameCube." That may sound like typical marketing speak, but when you hear about the hell that Sakurai put himself through to get the game out on time, I guarantee that you'll have a newfound respect for the poor guy. Part of this work included figuring out how to expand on the roster of the original Smash Bros., with fan requests playing an integral role here. Some of you might remember the character request poll back in the Smash 4 days, but this wasn't the first of its kind. Believe it or not, but when Smash N64 released, Sakurai released a poll online in his personal blog where he asked Japanese fans to make their voices heard about what characters they would like to see in a hypothetical Smash Bros. 2. Popular requests included Bowser, Peach, Mewtwo, Ganondorf, Young Link, Falco, and Marth, so it's clear to see that Sakurai genuinely listened to what the fans had to say. With that being said, not every character or series could find representation within Melee in playable form, so the development team came up with the idea of trophies. We'll get into them in more detail later on, but the idea behind them was to include a form of fan service that didn't require lots of development time. Speaking of collections of characters, many of them can be found in the game's iconic intro movie, and it's still gorgeous. I'm confident that you've seen this before in full, so if you haven't, pause this video and go look it up and just watch the whole thing. It's really quick and you won't be disappointed. The reason behind its stunning production value is that the developers wanted to include a type of video that could only exist on the 6th generation of consoles, and with that came a lot of work. In Sakurai's aforementioned YouTube video, it's claimed that 3 animation studios in Tokyo all collaborated to make it a reality, with Sakurai personally creating the storyboards over the new year. He was so committed to making something special that he chose to not spend the holiday with his family. Instead, he hunkered down and worked until the sun came up, and that's not an exaggeration. On a personal level, Melee had an extremely grueling development cycle. Some of my other games did too, but Melee sticks out far ahead of the pack in my mind. I worked on that game for 13 months straight, after all, without a single Sunday or holiday off that whole time. During parts of it, I was living a really destructive lifestyle. I would work for over 40 hours in a row, then go home to sleep for 4. I seriously felt like a man on a mission. With the original Nintendo 64 Smash Bros, there was no guarantee the game would be well received at all. I had my hands full just trying to make the completely new sort of fighting game that I had in mind. With Melee though, the previous game did well enough that Nintendo and the character designers knew what I wanted in advance, and I wanted a lot. It was the biggest project I had ever led up to that point, the first game of mine on disc-based media, the first that used an orchestra for music, the first with real polygon graphics. My staff was raring to go, and we plunged in full tilt from the start. I pushed myself beyond any limit I could think of because I doubted I would ever have the sheer amount of work in my hands ever again. To be quite honest, I am almost speechless. Japan has a reputation for karoshi, or death by overworking, and I think Sakurai pushed himself to the limits of his mortality. Working for 40 hours and sleeping for only 4 can't be good for your physical and mental well-being, and I can't imagine Sakurai's diet would have been great either. At that point in time, Sakurai dedicated his whole life to his work, which is crazy but also kind of admirable, and that type of work ethic is something I wish I had half of. Sakurai is a total beast, and thankfully, positive press began rolling in right away when Melee was shown off to the public. At E3 2001, Nintendo allowed attendees to get their hands on the title, and IGN reported that it arguably stole the show at Nintendo's booth that year. Thankfully, footage of the event lives on, and it's amazing hearing the crowd's reaction to the intro movie. The next demonstration was at Space World 2001, which was a Nintendo-focused trade show that the Big N ran themselves. IGN again reported that the game was coming along nicely, and that fans of the original wouldn't be disappointed. Promotion for Melee was running wild, especially in Japan, as Sakurai rebooted his blog under the name of Smash Dojo, which you might remember from the Brawl days, and Nintendo even started showing Melee commercials in Japanese movie theaters. With an insanely stressful development cycle, loads more content than the original game, and the press setting their expectations into overdrive, I'm sure that Sakurai was but 3 seconds away from going into cardiac arrest. No! You'll be okay, Sakurai, just think of Palutena and you'll survive, you're gonna get through it, buddy, just hang in there. Whew. Okay, in the meantime, let me explain how Melee's gameplay systems work. Okay, I'm sure we all know how Melee's gameplay loop functions, but for those who may not be familiar, I'll do my best to explain, although I will make a disclaimer. There are more subtle mechanics and gameplay quirks here than brain cells in my head, meaning that I can't cover every single system. If you would like to learn more, please check out the Smash Bros. Wiki website, as it provides fantastic coverage of Melee's more obscure intricacies. Anyway, characters in Melee can walk, run, jump, and air dodge, as well as attack, and the goal here is to send your enemy flying off the screen. You do this by raising their percentage, and the higher this is, the further away they'll go. In other words, beat up Jigglypuff to quickly raise her number, and then give her a one-way ticket to space. Players can use regular attacks, tilts, smash attacks, and specials to do battle, and none of them are locked behind motion inputs. You simply press a button with a direction, and it means that players of all skill levels can jump right in. The animations are also beautifully done, as they combine what I view as the 3 most important elements of how fighting game characters move: personality, impact, and readability. Every single move here reads perfectly, even when you're super far away, and it goes a long way in establishing authenticity. The characters have all been lovingly crafted to show off the special components belonging to their original series, and their moves just make perfect sense. Of course Bowser would breathe fire, of course Link would shoot arrows, and of course Dr. Mario would prescribe illegal doses of OxyContin, so we can immediately tell that a Herculean amount of effort went into respecting these characters' source materials. If you don't quite finish the opponent off, they can grab the stage's edge to recover, resuming battle. Many strategies concerning recovery prevention exist, however, with a common one being to grab the ledge yourself to prevent the enemy from doing so. Another way to prevent poor Luigi from recovering is to quite literally blow him up, and this is where items come into play. They spawn randomly around the map, and after picking one up, you can use the item until it runs out of juice. Bombs, plasma guns, hammers, and tomatoes can even be interacted with, just to name a few, and they all serve to enhance Smash Bros. As a party game. It's no secret that there's always been a debate over whether the series fits more into one category over the other, but when items are in play, I feel that it's definitely more of a party game. You can be playing amazingly well only to be stopped by a random item that spawned in from out of nowhere, and they can even interact with the stage itself. Unlike traditional 2D fighters, Melee's arenas directly impact the outcome of the match, as they feature platforms, stage hazards, evolving terrain, and labyrinthian level design to keep things interesting, and it's one of the best qualities of not just Melee but the whole series. It's really not that hard to get lost in the fan service of it all, as the more you explore, the more references and callbacks to pre-existing Nintendo games you can find. It leads to the characters feeling like small fish in a big pond as they inhabit all these wonderful worlds, my favorite of which being Pokefloats. And speaking of characters, the roster is awesome. Starting off with only 14 fighters, more will unlock until you earn the full 26. Yes, I'm counting Sheik and Zelda as separate characters, and Melee has the perfect mix of popular and oddball characters. I'm sure we all know characters like Mario, Link, Donkey Kong, etc., but I assume casual fans, especially those back in 2001, would have no clue about Marth, Roy, or Mr. Game & Watch. Despite some characters taking a lot of inspiration from others in the gameplay department, the bottom line is that every character possesses their own way of interacting with the game's mechanics. A subtle component that Melee shares with my favorite traditional fighting games is that, at least at my skill level, the system mechanics never aggressively dictate how characters function. I never feel that no matter who I play as, I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over again, helping Melee to remain fresh during long play sessions. My favorite character here is Captain Falcon, as his insane movement speed and satisfying combo routes really appeal to me, but the more sluggish characters with slower attack startup speed are good fun too. A major component of the game that sets it apart from its contemporaries is how fast-paced it is, and character statistics like movement speed and frame data impact how they function when looking at mobility. Remember how I said before that anybody could jump in and start playing? In a casual setting, sure, but when trying to play competitively, I hope you don't mind suffering from carpal tunnel. If you've ever seen high-level Melee before, you'll know that talented players across the world can make their characters move at lightning speed, and one popular technique used for this purpose is the wave dash. If you air dodge into the ground at a diagonal angle, your character keeps the momentum of the dodge, sliding along in the process. Some characters go further than others, but the basic idea is to chain these together in rapid succession. I'm nowhere near skilled enough to pull this off consistently, but better players with amazing hand-eye coordination can display awesome movement patterns this way, and it means that catching up to them can be quite the challenge. From what I can tell as an outsider to competitive Smash, the meta is somewhat skewed towards characters with solid movement and recovery options, although lower tier characters can absolutely rise up the ranks when played to perfection, with Arms' Red Yoshi being a prime example. Another quality of competitive Melee I've noticed is how high the rates of APM, or actions per minute, can be. What seems simple on a surface level quickly evolves into an intricate ballet of offense, defense, and mobility when money or pride is on the line, and there have been countless players who have almost robotically optimized their strategies over the years. Watch any top 8 match at EVO to see exactly what I'm talking about, and by the way, this is only the tip of the iceberg. With how short Melee's development cycle was, I'm convinced that half of this stuff wasn't intentional, and it came about as a result of players pushing the game to its absolute limits. There's a reason why people all around the world still play competitively after all, but what if you're not into that side of things? With my hands destroyed and my brain fried from attempting to make Pikachu slide across the map, I need to cool down a little, so let's do that by looking at Melee's content. Without spoiling anything, this game has a seemingly infinite amount of stuff to unlock, so in order to avoid dying from information overload, let's break it up into categories: single player, multiplayer, and miscellaneous. First up is Classic Mode, where you fight through a series of enemies before reaching a final boss, much like a traditional fighting game's arcade mode. It doesn't take too long to finish and provides a decent challenge, but it's nothing I haven't seen before. Thankfully, Adventure Mode is much more ambitious, and it's so much fun. Every level has a unique objective, and you can think of this as more of a platformer as you spend a lot of time running around and jumping on enemies. Sure, there's a lot of fighting in various levels, but my favorite parts are the ones that promote non-linear exploration, with the Zelda level being the prime example. Your goal here is to explore the map and find the iconic Triforce in 7 minutes, but if you enter the wrong room, Link will spawn to fight you. An objective like this is certainly out of the ordinary for a fighting game, but as Smash Bros. Is a platform fighter, objectives that require rapid vertical movement like these make total sense, and it's part of why the series is so special. Each of the 12 stages in Adventure Mode come with unique aesthetics and level designs, and it always feels fresh due to breaking away from Melee's core gameplay loop. Next up is All-Star Mode, and as it challenges you to defeat every character in the game in a single run, you can think of it as the game's survival mode. Your percentage doesn't deplete between matches, however, so you have to heal by picking up these hearts. Run out of hearts and there's no more healing, so long-term decision-making and strategy plays an integral role here. Returning to the rest area after every 3 fights will let you collect new trophies, and finishing All-Star Mode itself grants you a special trophy and access to the battlefield stage, so it's worth attempting to clear it. It must be stated that All-Star Mode needs to be unlocked, however, so get grinding. Event matches are bite-sized levels that feature specific objectives, and although there are only 10 in the beginning, there are actually a total of 51. Some events force you to play as certain characters with themed goals, and I really like this actually. These event matches make players utilize characters and strategies that they otherwise might not explore, and using a brand new technique to clear a tricky level is endlessly satisfying. Stadium contains Home Run Contest, where you try to launch poor sandbag as far as possible, Target Test, where you have to destroy all the targets as fast as possible, and Multi-Man Melee, where you have to defeat a team of enemies. The latter is unique in that more than 4 characters can be on screen at once, which was an impossibility in regular play due to the GameCube only having 4 controller ports. In my view, these 3 modes are the most arcadey, as although they don't go on for very long, they call upon players to keep trying for high scores, and it always feels nice to improve on your pre-existing stats. Finally, there's a training mode, and you can practice whatever you like here. You can freely spawn in items to cause some chaos, although I found it more fun to explore the stages, especially with the right stick. Despite being used for offensive purposes in real matches, using it here manipulates the camera and it can look quite silly. The only downside is that you can't actually practice attacks with the right stick, which is a real shame. Moving on to multiplayer now, Versus Mode is probably the most played mode in Melee, as it's where you can do battles with other people or the CPU. Whether you want to sweat it out on Final Destination with Fox only, or you want to have some casual fun with a group, Versus Mode is where it's at. It's always fun to try out new characters here, and I used to grind out stock matches against the CPU when I was younger and couldn't play with anybody else. With that being said, fighting AI-controlled opponents in regular matches does get boring after a while, and luckily, the developers included some interesting ways to spice things up. Special Melee hosts different settings players can interact with, and they're pretty self-explanatory. Giant Melee and Camera Mode are my favorites, with the former making the game even more insane. If you couldn't tell by now, the whole game represents when developers decide to throw everything at the wall, no matter how weird it is, and I love it. The final multiplayer offering is Tournament Mode, and this pits up to 64 players in a single elimination format. I can imagine that if you're having fun in a group and you don't want to sweat it out by opening challenge and getting everybody's names in the bracket, the built-in Tourney Mode does work well enough, and it's enjoyable seeing how far you can get against the AI enemies. Don't get me wrong, it's far from being perfect, as you can't change characters, seeding, or make it double elimination, but as a casual party mode, I can't complain. Okay, we finally made it to Miscellaneous, and this concerns all the unlockables. Making their first appearance as collectibles in Melee, trophies are a now iconic part of the series, and there are 290 to find here. Well, technically there are 293, but these 3 are Japanese exclusive and require weird unlocking methods, so I'm not counting them. Playable characters, items, sprite art, Pokemon, Kirby groups, F-Zero vehicles, and even the nightmare-inducing moon from Majora's Mask show up here. And if you're the type of player who tries to earn all the game's collectibles, you're going to be playing this game for eons. Many trophies will be unlocked through normal play as they show up all over the place in single player, but others take much more time and skill. The food trophy, for example, requires you to play 1,000 versus matches, which is a crazy amount, especially because trophies don't actually do anything, they're just there to look nice. Or how about Captain Olimar, who can only be unlocked if you have a Pikmin 1 save file on your memory card? The sheer depravity of some of these unlock requirements blew me away, and my jaw dropped several times when I was scrolling through their details online. Even though some of them require you to commit war crimes to unlock, they still pale in comparison to the unlockable fighters. If you want to earn every single playable character, you're going to have to work for it, and there are 3 descriptors I've thought of: reasonable requirements, confusing requirements, and evil requirements. Finishing Classic Mode with any character to unlock Jigglypuff? Yeah, okay, that's pretty fair. Finishing the first level of Adventure Mode with the 4th digit on the timer being 2 to challenge Luigi? A bit weird and hyper-specific, but nothing too crazy. Play 20 hours of Versus Mode to unlock Mewtwo? Okay, that's a bit far, especially if you don't have any siblings like me and had to play it alone as a kid. If you don't want to grind out single-player games, then you can do this in Versus Mode, as continuous play will eventually unlock every single character, and that's not even mentioning unlocking the stages. There's so much stuff to see and do in Melee to the point where it scares me, and I'm pretty sure that if Sakurai were an evil man, he would torture people by forcing them to participate in Saw-like games where the escape method was to fulfill some form of arbitrary unlock requirement. I'm definitely exaggerating a little bit, but the underlying point is that Melee's content will keep players of all skill levels invested, and it's why so many casual players keep coming back. It goes without saying by now, but thanks to Melee's gameplay improvements, colossal amount of content, and enduring replay value, it was an instant classic upon release. Every single review outlet I could find gave it either a perfect or a near-perfect score, unless your name is Edge, as they gave the game a 6 out of 10. A vast majority of Melee systems were beloved the world over, and despite some critics claiming that the game was too fast-paced for its own good, the die-hard fans loved it for that. As Melee's sales figures rose, its Metacritic score did too, and it currently boasts a 92 out of 100, making it one of the most critically acclaimed GameCube titles of all time. Even today, nearly 25 years later, the game is still running rampant at competitive Smash Bros. Events, and there's a plethora of match footage you can find online dating back so many years. I'm not going to get into the specifics of Melee's worldwide competitive circuit, as I'm sure we're all familiar with it by now, but there are plenty of timeless moments that were a direct result of this game. Countless exciting moments, grudge matches, rivalries, hilarious rage quits, and even charitable actions all play a part in Melee's legacy. Hell, it went so far to the point where community members would even make diss tracks against their competition, and I've got to applaud Chillin' Dude here, this is wild. Anyway, many of Melee's features, like event mode, trophies, home run contest, etc., have made their way into more recent Smash Bros. Titles, so it's clear that Melee's legacy is still burning brightly. Even though the original game set the groundwork for the series, Melee refined the Smash Bros. Formula so well to the point where it introduced many aspects we now take for granted. For example, Fire Emblem may be borderline mainstream nowadays, but back in 2001, no one outside of Japan would have known about it, with many people's first exposure to the series being Marth and Roy's inclusion in Melee. I'm also sure that Mr. Game & Watch and the Ice Climbers would have introduced newer fans to other old-school Nintendo IPs too. Popo and Nana have even become fan favorites, and I remember how disappointed players were when they didn't return for Smash 4. Even things that aren't in this game found their origins here, believe it or not, as Brawl's introduction of Sonic and Snake dates back to Sakurai wishing to include them in Melee. So, with an ultra-passionate fanbase who still lugs around modded Wiis and old TVs to play their favourite game, an undeniable impact on video game history, and a cast of iconic characters without any rights issues, you would think that Nintendo would port Melee to another platform. This could have happened, however, with the story being that after Satoru Iwata announced a new Smash Bros. Out of nowhere for the Wii during E3 2005 without contacting Sakurai beforehand, the two met up after the event, and Iwata asked Sakurai to lead the charge behind a new game. Iwata then stated that if Sakurai refused this offer, they would simply port Melee to the Wii with online play, and even though most of the Smash community doesn't like Brawl for its slower gameplay mechanics, I'm really happy that Sakurai accepted the offer. The lack of a Melee port is also no surprise, as Smash 64, Brawl, and 4 never received releases on other systems, so I don't think Nintendo is scrambling to re-release Melee for the Switch 2. Despite this, it's now easier than ever to experience Melee online with friends via Slippy, a program that, among other things, provides Melee with full rollback netcode. I've tried this out with a friend before in the past and it worked super well, so definitely get on it, it's incredible. Finally, there's also a passionate modding scene for the game, with Beyond Melee catching my interest during my research. Thanks to this mod, Melee now has new characters, stages, and balance changes, so if you're looking for a fresh way to experience an old classic, check it out. With all of that being said, it's no secret that Smash Bros. Melee is an all-time classic, and it's arguably the best title on the GameCube, alongside Twilight Princess, Mario Sunshine, Killer 7, and Shrek. Okay, jokes aside, I had a blast revisiting Melee for this video, and actively researching the minutiae of its gameplay and development helped me gain a greater appreciation of the title. If I had to pick one game in the series as my favorite, I would definitely go with Ultimate, as it's pretty much impossible to beat its behemoth of a character roster. And even though Nintendo cucked me by turning Dante and Travis Touchdown into Mii fighters, I still love the series. Smash Bros. Is beautifully whimsical in everything that it sets out to do, and it's one of the few Nintendo series I vividly remember playing to death as a kid. With how the Switch 2 features GameCube games as part of the Nintendo Online program, perhaps Melee can make an official comeback one day? I mean, if they're gonna put Chibi Robo, a series that is dead and buried, onto the program, I still miss you, my friend, then I hope Jigglypuff and friends on Final Destination can return too. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time and I hope you had fun. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.